Okay, so have you ever heard one of those stories that just stops you in your tracks, makes you think, wait, what really happened there?
Yeah, like something completely out of the blue, something that doesn't quite fit.
Exactly. Imagine just, taking a walk out in the wilderness, maybe looking for some interesting rocks.
Uh-huh. Prospecting, maybe.
Right, exactly. And you end up with weird burns, this wild story, and a mystery that people are still talking about like decades later.
You must be talking about Falcon Lake. May 1967.
That's the one, the Falcon Lake incident. It's really something else.
It is, because what makes it so fascinating, I think, is the level of detail. This wasn't just a light in the sky. The guy involved, Steve Michalak.
Yeah, an industrial mechanic, but also kind of an amateur geologist.
Right. He claimed physical contact, these really specific injuries, even hearing voices, human voices, apparently. It's just got so many weird layers.
Totally. So picture it. Michaelak's out there near Falcon Lake in Manitoba, middle of nowhere, Canada.
Beautiful country up there, but probably not expecting this.
No kidding. He ends up flagging down a highway patrol officer, Constable G.A. Solotki.
And tells him he's been burned
Yeah.
by a spaceship. You can just imagine Solotki's reaction.
Right. Like, okay, buddy, slow down. And Michaelak's first words are apparently, don't get too close.
Yeah, he was worried about, what was it, skin disease or radiation?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, he tells Solotki he saw these two glowing red things spinning around.
And that he actually touched one,
Yeah,
and it burned his hat and his shirt.
he did. And Solotki, the constable, he actually did see a burn mark on Michaelak's hat.
But not on his head, which is odd.
Super odd. And Solotki also noted these marks on Michaelak's skin, said they look like someone just rubbed ash on him.
Not like a typical burn then, more
Yeah.
like soot or something.
Yeah, it's those little details, they just stick with you.
They really do. And another weird thing Solotki noticed, Michalak had zero gear on him.
Right. For a guy supposedly out prospecting, no equipment, no camping stuff, not even a car nearby.
Nothing. Which, understandably made Solotki think maybe this guy's had a few too many.
Sure, that's where your mind would go.
But he didn't smell any alcohol on him. And then Michalak refuses a ride, refuses medical help right there at Falcon Beach.
That part always gets me. If you think you've been burned by radiation from a UFO, wouldn't you want a doctor, like, immediately?
You'd think so. It feels like a strange reaction to a potentially serious event.
Instead, he catches a bus all the way back to Winnipeg
And then goes to the Misericordia Health Center that night.
for first-degree burns, according to the records. So he did get treatment, just delayed.
That delay is definitely a point skeptics bring up. But he did go. And then, a couple of days later, things really blow up.
Ah, yes, the media gets involved. He contacts the Winnipeg Tribune.
And boom, I was burned by UFO headline, complete with his drawing of the craft, that classic disc shape.
Suddenly, everyone knows about Steve Michalak. And his story gets even wilder when he talks to the press.
Oh yeah. He says one of the two objects he saw actually landed, described it as like 35 feet long, metallic.
And a door opened with bright violet light pouring out.
Yeah, and hissing sounds.
Mhm.
And the voices. That's the really strange part. So they sounded definitely human.
Definitely human. Wild. And he tried talking to them.
In multiple languages. Polish, Russian, German, English. Trying anything, I guess.
But got nothing back. Just silence from the occupants, if there were any.
Apparently so. The whole voice thing is unusual for these kinds of reports, isn't it? Usually it's weird noises or just silence.
For sure. And then there are the burns themselves. He starts describing them in a very specific way.
The checkerboard pattern. He claimed that's how he got burned when the craft took off.
Mhm.
That his family doctor looked at them too.
And after the encounter, he reported all sorts of symptoms, right? Headaches, throwing up.
Vomiting, yeah, rapid weight loss, even this weird foul smell coming off his body. It sounds pretty traumatic.
It does. And he claimed it wasn't just his word against the world. He said there was physical evidence left behind.
Right, the landing site. He described this circular spot where the grass and leaves were just gone, like blasted away by heat or something.
Plus that burnt undershirt with a grid pattern on it.
Which, interestingly, he said, didn't match the irregular burns on his actual skin. So, two different patterns.
Yeah, so you've got the story, the injuries, and now alleged physical traces at the scene. It's a lot.
It is. And that combination, the detailed account, the claimed physical effects, the alleged evidence, that's what really kicked off the investigation.
Okay, so who actually looked into this? It wasn't just Constable Solotki writing a report, I assume.
Oh, no. This went way up the chain. You had the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police,
Mounties, right?
the Royal Canadian Air Force, the Department of Health, National Defense. Basically, a lot of official Canadian bodies got involved.
And even south of the border?
Yep. APRO, the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, a
Mhm.
civilian group, they were interested. And the U.S. Air Force, too.
As part of the Condon Committee, that was the big official UFO study back then, wasn't it?
Yeah. That's the one. So yeah, this case got serious attention. It wasn't just dismissed out of hand.
And didn't someone like a civilian investigator photograph the burns pretty early on?
They did. And the medical records from his hospital visit describe them as several round and irregular-shaped burns the size of a silver dollar.
Okay, see, that's interesting. Round and irregular. That doesn't sound like the neat checkerboard pattern he described later.
Exactly. That's a key point of confusion, or maybe inconsistency. The earliest evidence doesn't quite seem to match the later description that became so famous.
When the RCMP talked to him just days after it happened, what did he tell them? Did the story match up?
Mostly, yeah. He told them about the weight loss, the nausea, vomiting, headaches, the weird taste and smell. The officer saw the burns, too. Described them as looking like a really bad localized sunburn.
And did he explain why he was hesitant with Salaki at first?
He did. Said he was worried about the radiation, didn't want to contaminate the officer or his car. Makes some sense, I guess.
And the location. Was he cagey about that?
A little bit, yeah. He apparently thought he'd stumbled onto a valuable mineral deposit, maybe nickel, near the landing site.
Ah, the prospector angle. Didn't want anyone jumping his claim.
Seems like it.
Yeah.
But he did eventually offer to take them to the spot, show them his burnt cap, those melted grinder goggles he wore,
Right, the geologist's gear.
and the burnt undershirt. That got sent off for testing. Radioactivity tests. Came back negative initially. He also gave a partially melted glove to the APRO investigator.
So the investigators eventually went out there, to the site.
They did. RCMP and the Air Force did air and ground searches a few days later. They found some things Michalak mentioned leaving behind, like a shopping bag and an old saw.
Okay.
But they couldn't find the actual circular landing spot he described. It was like the clues were there, but the main scene was missing.
Okay, but here's something that throws a bit of a curveball, right? The police interviews at the local hotel.
Ah, yeah. The Falcon Hotel. Employees there remembered Michalak having, well, quite a few beers the night before the alleged encounter.
Which directly contradicts what Michalak himself told them. He denied drinking any alcohol.
It does.
That did.
And that's, well, it's a discrepancy. Makes you question either his memory or maybe his honesty about the whole thing.
Definitely raises a flag. And things got even weirder with finding the site, didn't they?
They did. About a month later, Michalak contacts the Air Force again. Says he and a partner finally found the spot.
Okay, progress.
You'd think. He agrees to take investigators there, but then backs out. Refuses to cooperate.
Again, why this time?
Same reason, basically. Worried about his mineral claim. And he also admitted he'd already removed stuff from the site himself.
Like what?
His burnt outer shirt, some soil samples, even though he'd been told specifically not to touch anything.
Oh man, that's not good if you want a clean investigation. Tampering with potential evidence.
Not at all. It looks obstructive, frankly. And guess what happened with the soil sample he did eventually provide?
Let me guess. It was unusual.
Highly radioactive.
Yeah.
That definitely got attention. Officials even swept his house for radioactive materials.
Wow. So alien radiation confirmed.
Well, hold on. When authorities finally got to the site Michalak led them to, they did find a sort of semicircle cleared of moss.
Okay.
But the radiation, only very low, trace amounts, found in a crack in a rock. Levels considered totally safe.
So not highly radioactive then. Where did the first sample reading come from?
Good question.
Oh.
Chemists suggested the radioactivity they did find could easily have come from something like radium-based luminescent paint, glow-in-the-dark stuff.
Which was common back then, right? On watch dials and things.
Exactly.
Huh?
Commercially available. So a very earthly explanation was possible. Maybe not alien tech after all.
And Michalak even published his own booklet about it later that year.
He did. Self-published. But the story wasn't over. It took another twist in early '68.
Oh, right. The return of the grid. The burns came back.
He claimed they reappeared, yeah. About 8 months after the first incident. And this time, photos show marks on his abdomen that look very different.
Like a grid. Uniform dots.
Exactly. A clear grid of evenly spaced dots. And this photo often gets confused with the original burns, but it's totally different.
So the first burns were irregular, like silver dollars. These new ones are a perfect grid.
Nothing like the ones documented initially by the doctors in the early photos. It's a major shift.
What did doctors make of these new marks?
Well, he was examined by a psychiatrist at the Mayo Clinic later that year. Their conclusion: The new lesions were obviously factitial,
Meaning,
meaning self-inflicted, likely self-inflicted, though they didn't find signs of any major mental illness, just that the marks seemed self-made.
okay, so that adds another layer of confusion.
Doubt. Definitely doubt. You've got the initial event, the weird inconsistencies, the maybe explainable radiation, and now burns reappearing in a pattern that looks self-inflicted.
It starts to paint a complicated picture. What about that metal fragment he supposedly found later?
Right, late 68. He says he found this piece of metal near the site. It got analyzed by Peter Millman, an astronomer and UFO researcher.
Alien alloy.
Nope, mostly silver, and only very slightly radioactive. About the same level as a glow-in-the-dark watch face.
Huh. So not exactly exotic.
Not at all. Millman even suggested it might have been deliberately made radioactive, maybe dipped in pitch blende or something, to look like an artifact. Basically, he suspected it could be faked.
So the physical evidence is shaky, the medical evidence gets complicated. You can see why skeptics had a field day.
Absolutely. You add up the alcohol denial versus the hotel staff, the changing story about the burns, the site access issues, the explainable radiation, the potentially faked metal.
It fuels theories that maybe it wasn't extraterrestrial. Some thought maybe he faked it to protect his mining claim, right? Keep people away.
That was definitely one theory floated. Or maybe, as one skeptic suggested, it was some kind of weird allergic reaction initially, and the story grew from there. The inconsistencies give a lot of room for doubt.
Despite all that doubt, all the questions, this Falcon Lake story has really stuck around.
It absolutely has.
Yeah.
CBC News called it Canada's best documented UFO case, even 50 years later.
Why documented? Because of all the official investigations.
Exactly. The sheer volume of reports from the RCMP, the RCAF, the medical records, the Condon Committee involvement, even with the contradictions, it generated a huge paper trail. And the initial claims involved physical evidence.
And it seeped into pop culture, too. Unsolved Mysteries covered it, didn't they?
Oh yeah, that brought it to a massive audience. And music, too. Jim Bryson and the Weaker Thins have an album called The Falcon Lake Incident.
There's a movie, Rulers of Darkness, apparently inspired by it, and the book by Michael Lack's son and Chris Rutkowski, the UFO researcher.
When they appeared, Falcon Lake, 1967, it keeps the story alive, tells the family perspective.
And the ultimate Canadian stamp of approval.
The coin. The Royal Canadian Mint issued a commemorative glow-in-the-dark coin for the 50th anniversary, part of their Unexplained Phenomena series.
A glow-in-the-dark UFO coin. You can't make this stuff up. It really shows how much this case captured the imagination.
It really does. It's literally part of Canadian numismatic history now.
So, wrapping this up, we're left with this really compelling initial account, right? A guy gets burned, sees something incredible.
Backed up by some initial observations, claims of physical evidence triggering major investigations.
But then tangled up with inconsistencies, shifting details, evidence that might have earthly explanations, and actions that seem, well, suspicious.
And after all the investigations, all the analysis, official sources basically threw up their hands.
Yeah.
No definitive explanation.
It just hangs there, unresolved.
Precisely. The Falcon Lake incident remains one of the great UFO enigmas. Still debated, still fascinating.
So, thinking about it all, the believable bits, the really weird bits, the stuff that makes you go, what do you make of it all? Could there be a simple explanation or missing, or something truly out of the ordinary going on in those woods?
Or put yourself back in 1967. You're the first investigator on the scene after Solotki. What's the one thing you absolutely need to nail down first to even start unraveling this?
Yeah. What's the loose thread you pull first? Definitely something to chew on long after this deep dive.